hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaged debates, the most interesting topics going on in the world today. And tonight is no different. Again, just up here trying to fight the pain, the physical pain. So it's crazy. I'm sorry we're getting started so late. I never like to get started past midnight for a million reasons, but it was that or nothing. But I'm not pain free by any stretch, but I'm feeling a lot better than I did. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here with you all tonight. We got a few stories we want to cover. I'll also take some Q&A. If you all send me a super chat, super sticker, super thanks, and it has some info on it, I will answer it. I'll address it. I will give you a response. We'll do it tonight. But there's a few stories. You know, everybody's talking Diddy trial. Everybody's talking Donald Trump. There's lots of other stuff going on in the world. Again, if you want to ask some questions, I'm happy to provide some answers. I'm excited to do so. In fact, I'm not sleepy. I'm not tired. I'm not sad. I'm not frustrated, except that the world's on fire. That always does that. But in general, I'm okay today. It's been a rough week in a lot of ways, but today seems okay. I'm so grateful to everybody who hung around for this. But let's get to it. I know y'all didn't come here to just see me yap about nothing. Not when there's so much to yap about. And again, drop those questions in if you got them. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to start, though, with the Diddy trial. Normally we don't. Normally we end with the Diddy trial because there's a lot of things going on in the world. But today, I do think that it's, in particular, an important day. So let's get to it. Prosecutors in Diddy's sex trafficking trial just told the judge they're backing off parts of the original case, at least their original case. That includes attempted kidnapping, attempted arson, and helping others commit sex trafficking. Now, let's be clear, because there's a lot of misinformation going around the internet. The feds are not dropping the big charges. You know, we saw an announcement coming earlier today, or early Wednesday morning. Some of the big websites picked it up. Some of the gossip sites picked it up. And it made it seem as if Diddy was getting a pass or the prosecution had failed to meet its burden and they were withdrawing the case. That's not what's happening. Diddy is still very much in the crosshairs of the state. He's still facing 3 serious counts: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transporting women for prostitution. All 3 of those are still on docket. What's changing is how the jury hears the case. Prosecutors want the instructions to be crystal clear. So they've cut out some of the side theories. I'll give you an example. Initially, the arson charge was there as a way of holding Diddy accountable for blowing up, allegedly, Kid Cudi's car. There was also the story of him snatching a woman, forcing her into a space where she would take a lie detector test to see if she'd stolen his jewelry. I think it was very clear to the federal government that they weren't making that case. We'll talk about why they would pull back. The alleged arson and the kidnapping still mattered, but only if they were actually done, not tried. Now, Diddy's legal team tried to slip in a whole new twist, a whole different twist, possibly connecting the trial to foreign policy. They tried to tie the trial to the U.S. Bombing of the nuclear sites in Iran, but the judge was like, knock it off, shut it down. We're going to see closing arguments, begin starting Thursday morning. I suspect they'll last all day Thursday and probably at least part of Friday, if not all of Friday. And then it goes to the jury. Let's be clear. Diddy is still facing life. 2 of the 3 serious charges bring with the maximum of a life sentence. The transporting women for prostitution, I believe, carries with it a max of 10 years. So 2 have a max of life, 1 has a max of 10. Diddy's not out of the woods by any stretch. And anyone who's watched this case or listened to the mounds of evidence knows that Diddy did a lot of this shit. I don't know if he did all of it, but he did a lot of it. It's hard to watch this case and not be disgusted by Diddy. It's hard to watch this case and not desire some form of accountability for him. You know, we can have different theories, different ideas, different beliefs about what accountability looks like. As an abolitionist, it looks a little different to me, but at the end of the day, we can all have our stances on this. But what's clear from this trial is that Diddy's done some depraved shit. What's less clear to some observers is whether the depraved and awful, evil, disgusting, violent things that Diddy did are in line with the charges that he's facing. For example, we have him on videotape engaged in a savage beating of Cassie. Cassie Ventura was savagely beaten. CNN leaked that over a year and a half ago. It was disgusting. It was awful. But he's charged with racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transporting women for prostitution. That kind of charge isn't proven by that video. What the video, though, does is make you realize Diddy's a monster. What the video also does is it helps to make a case for coercion. It helps to make a case that people were operating against their own will, against their own interests. So I'm not saying that the case hasn't been made. I think the case has been made, but it's not as open and shut as some people would hoped it would be. Nor is it as much of a slam dunk, not guilty, as Diddy's team would hope it would be. From what I see, the state has met its burden. From what I see, Diddy will absolutely be found guilty. Now, where the complexity comes in is the sentencing and which convictions he ultimately is found guilty on, or ultimately have applied to him. There's another thing here. Yeah, they got rid of that arson kidnapping charge. The question might be why. If the state can throw a million things against you, why not just let it all go and see what happens, right? If we can throw 10 things at you, and only 3 gonna stick, then only 3 gonna stick. Why take 3 or 4 off? The answer is a complicated one, but it's intuitive in some sense. The state, I mean, one could argue they're being principled, right? We haven't met our standard here, so we're not going to charge you for something that we can't convict you on. It's the wrong thing to do. You've convinced us. Now, we know that's not how governments work. That's not how prosecutors work. We know that ain't it. So we have to ask ourselves, what's the real reason? Real reason is strategic. If even the prosecution doesn't believe that the case has been made that Diddy did arson. Again, do I think Diddy did arson? Yeah. Do I think he blew up Cuddy's car? Absolutely. Or said, I think he did all that shit. But was the case made? No. Even through the testimony of Cuddy, like, it wasn't really made effectively. So you don't want the jury in there feeling really confident about a not guilty determination for any of the charges when you got these nuanced charges still lingering. In other words, you don't want to confuse the jury. You don't want the jury saying yes to this, no to that, particularly when the ones that they'd be saying no to aren't the heaviest of things. You know, Diddy wouldn't be on trial if it were about making a woman take a forced lie detector or blowing up Cuddy's car. Not that those things are okay, but that's not how the U.S. government operates. So what that means is they want to take this stuff off the table so that the jury can focus almost exclusively on the things that they can prove and that they believe have been proven and that they believe will cause Diddy to go to jail for prison, for a long, long time. That's the idea. That is the logic. The other thing here is jury instructions. It's not just that they're going to make closing arguments now. It's that they're going to request the prosecution several jury instructions, which of course are quite important. Now, the fight over these jury instructions will be interesting, but the jury instructions effectively will be, well, at least one of them, from what I understand, what I've read, is that the jury needs to be instructed that just because someone consented to a sexual act does not mean that the consent cannot be revoked. In other words, just because Cassie wanted to have sex on this day or even at this moment doesn't mean that another day or even one moment later she doesn't have the ability to make a different choice. And the other issue that they want, the other instruction they want issued to the jury is around monetary payment. In other words, if someone is paid to have sex, it doesn't mean necessarily that they weren't trafficked, that they weren't forced. The defense is going to fight that. I think they're going to lose, but they're going to fight that. It's a matter of the law, and it's important that the jury doesn't think, despite what Diddy's attorneys are saying, that Cassie wanted to have sex. So this text from Tuesday says she wanted to have sex, so therefore she wasn't coerced or she wasn't forced. These are the types of things that we have to clarify for the jury. It's not a matter of opinion; it's a matter of law. That's the argument the prosecution is going to make, and the defense is going to fight. They're going to say it's confusing to the jury, that it's not just issuing a legal instruction; it's making an argument, and it's going to sway the jury against Diddy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the fight. But we will see what happens. But please believe that the prosecution dropping any charges, it ain't good for the defense. I mean, it ain't good for the prosecution. The prosecution dropping charges ain't good for them. I don't think that they're in the disaster/crisis mode that some observers are saying. And I don't even call observers. Some people who don't know what they're talking about are saying. But I will say that it's never good when you drop in charges, because that either means that you didn't make your case or you should have never made the charges. Either way, you don't look good. But we'll see what happens. Again, I think we'll have an answer to all of this very soon. I don't think this deliberation is going to be long. I think if they make the closing arguments on Friday, I think we'll have a verdict by Monday. I do. That's what I imagine. But we'll see what happens. All right, y'all. Let's move on to another story. This one's interesting and troubling in a lot of ways. Capitol Police zip-tied disabled protesters, some of whom were in wheelchairs, and then dragged them out of the Senate building. Why? Because they were begging Congress not to cut Medicaid. The protest went down in the Russell Senate Rotunda, where more than 30 people, including elders and folks with disabilities, got cuffed and they got carried out. Why? Again, they were asking for support. They were asking for help. They had the audacity to stand in the rotunda chanting, "No cuts to Medicaid." They had on shirts too. The shirts said, "Healthcare cuts will kill." They made it plain. Now, that's not an exaggeration. We're talking about millions of people who could lose coverage, and it will cause deaths. It will cause unnecessary suffering. It will create a preventable disease from spreading, or an avoidable death from happening, or from it'll prevent an avoidable death from being averted, from not happening, rather. Now, these folk were calling out the so-called, as Trump calls it, Big Beautiful Bill. Now, the Big Beautiful Bill, if you don't know, is a Trump-backed budget that slashes Medicaid, it slashes SNAP, it slashes Social Security, all while funding another war in the Middle East. Protest leaders from Popular Democracy in Action and SEIU say that this budget is death by legislation. Not for everybody, but for poor people. It's death by legislation for poor people. And too often we see death by legislation. They don't come out with these repressive state apparatuses anymore. They don't come out with the guns and the tanks and just shoot everybody. Not all the time. Sometimes they do. Now you can issue a public policy that will be facially neutral. It will be colorblind. It will be it won't be class contingent. And yet in practice, it will do all of those things. It will make the rich richer. It'll make the poor poor. It will sacrifice workers' rights. It'll kill living wages. It'll do all the things that we don't want to happen, at least that those of us on the left say we don't want to happen. And that is exactly what is happening. Now, the Capitol Police say 34 people were arrested for what they call it, crowding and obstructing. Now, we all know disorderly conduct, obstruction, crowd, all these things are charges that can be applied selectively and are applied selectively. It's just based on who we like and who we want to give it to. People in wheelchairs and elderly people should not be charged with these things for protesting and defending their own right, because the very people who are handcuffing and zip tying and evicting wheelchair-bound, elderly, disabled people from the rotunda are the same people oftentimes who had no issue with the January 6th insurrection. So let's be honest here and let's be consistent. Anyway, if you think all this protest is not tied to you, think again. These Medicaid cuts are important, and they're important to you. If you don't think it's going to hit you, your mama, your cousin, or your kid next, you're just not paying attention. These cuts are going to rip healthcare away from 10 million low-income Americans. That's a whole lot of folk. Real lives are on the line. This is not an abstract issue. This is not a philosophical question. People are going to die. First votes on this Medicaid slashing bill, they could go down as early as Thursday, June 26th, or Friday, June 27th. Donald Trump is very clear that he wants the bill passed by the 4th of July, because what says American independence, liberation, freedom, and democracy like sticking it to 10 million poor people? My God, what a despicable human being. Anyway, stay loud, y'all. Keep watching. Not just the trial that's inevitably going to come from these protesters, but also the bill itself. We need your vigilance. All right, y'all. We got one more story before we go, and I see some questions that I'm going to get to as well. We're going to talk about y'all favorite person. All right. Candace Owens. She's back in the news again. I swear every week Candace Owens is doing something that is drawing the attention of the media, not just right-wing media anymore. No, across the board. Well, the most recent news comes because Candace Owens just dragged Donald Trump on live TV. She called him a chronic disappointment and says that she's embarrassed that she ever told folks to vote for him. Now, I personally have been to war with Candace Owens. I've debated Candace Owens, and I've debated her on the issue of Donald Trump. So I know how hard she rode for Donald Trump. And now she's saying he is a chronic disappointment and that she is embarrassed to have ever voted for him or to have told other people to vote for him, more importantly. Yep. This is 2016 Candace Owens. This is 2024 Candace Owens. Both versions of Candace were endorsing Trump, and both are doing an about face. Candace was on Piers Morgan Uncensored, a show that you've seen me on and others on, where she said that Trump's latest moves, especially teaming up with Israel to bomb Iran, show that President Trump has lost the plot. She says Israel is running U.S. foreign policy now. Now, that's not a unique statement. It's not an original statement. It's also not an inaccurate statement in certain ways. But Candace Owens ain't alone in saying it. She echoed former Representative Tulsi Gabbard, who said there was no real threat from Iran. It was just fear-mongering to justify war. Candace's words hit hard because, again, she was one of the people, remember the Black Sit a few years ago, she was one of the people helping to pull Black people, and specifically Black conservatives, toward Donald Trump. But now she doesn't think that way. She thinks he's reckless. She thinks he's out of touch. She thinks he is no longer worthy of support. And it's interesting because if Candace Owens thinks that, other people might be next. Other folk might be following up. Let's see what's said.
Voting for him. Oh, yeah, he can't run again, obviously. Are you done with Donald Trump, or could you see a way that you would end up perhaps voting for him? Oh, yeah, he can't run again, obviously, but would you support him publicly again?
Though I want to be clear, I don't regret voting for Donald Trump above Kamala. I think he was the better candidate, certainly a better candidate above Joe Biden. But what I will say is that he's been a chronic disappointment. And I feel embarrassed that I told people to go vote for him because this wasn't going to happen and it is happening. But I just think that the picture of politics in America is going to look very differently because of his actions. So I don't know where we go from here. I really don't. But this is not the candidate that I voted for.
If it turns out that his instincts were right, that by doing what he did, it brings Iran to the negotiating table and they do a deal on their nuclear plans, would you admit that you were wrong in that circumstance?
Yeah. I will always admit when I'm wrong. Anybody that listens to my podcast knows that. It just so happens to be that, especially if I come on to the Piers Morgan show and I make some predictions, that it ends up that I'm right. So I'm feeling lucky, but I will of course admit I'm wrong if that is the result.
So Candace Owens taking an interesting position. Again, I was there. I was in Trump Tower. I was in the Trump suites talking to her one day. It was a 2020. Right before Trump was defeated, the winter before he was defeated. And I saw that she was still very much endorsing, supporting Donald Trump. And her position is pretty clear. She's saying, look, Trump was still better than the Democrats. He's better than Biden. He was better than Kamala Harris. That said, Trump sucks. That's effectively what she's saying. I'm paraphrasing, but that's her point, right? He's not, this isn't the person I voted for. He's better than them, but I didn't vote for him to be better than them. I voted for him to be good. And what Candace Owens is experiencing is what a lot of people experience with Donald Trump, which is that he says one thing and does something very, very different. Candace Owens has been incredibly clear and articulate about her criticism of Israel's genocide in Gaza. She's been very clear that she doesn't support a U.S. government, and we saw Tucker Carlson say this last week to some extent too, a U.S. government whose policies and practices are over-determined by Israel or by Netanyahu in particular. Candace has made it very clear that she thinks that innocent people have a right to safety, dignity, and self-determination, and certainly a right not to be killed. And so when Republican Congress, Republican Congressman, what was his name? I can't remember his name now, but he basically said there are no innocent Palestinians a year and a half ago. She spoke up and was outraged by it. When she looks at the way that the Israeli military is prosecuting this war, she's very clear that she's not happy with it. We could go on and on and on. So it doesn't surprise me that she's now saying, wait a minute, this incursion into Iran is also problematic. Why is it the U.S.'s business? Why are we spending so much money? Why are we bombing these nuclear sites or these ostensible nuclear sites? We could talk about, I mean, they're technically nuclear sites because if there's any uranium, they're nuclear sites, but they weren't bomb facilities. They weren't bomb shelters. They weren't 3 weeks away from making a nuke like they like to pretend. And so it's not shocking that she'd be criticizing that too. That tracks. But she didn't just say, I don't agree with him on foreign policy. She said he's reckless, he's out of touch, he's no longer worthy of support. I think she's speaking to how Donald Trump has navigated this presidency so far in the early stages, how he's moved through the world, how he's engaged his supporters. And I honestly thought for all of her support of Donald Trump and how instrumental Candace Owens was in getting Black support for Donald Trump, that Donald Trump should have been more grateful. He should have been more communicative, and he should have been more publicly supportive of Candace Owens. And again, I don't like Donald Trump. I don't want him to support anybody. I don't want anybody to support him. But just in terms of how politics is played, I don't think that Candace Owens got a fair deal from Trump. Now, many of you are suspicious of her comments and her actions recently. Kismet J said, guess the grift isn't paying anymore. I don't want to get into the ad hominems or the personal stuff. I don't want to guess what's in people's heads. What I will say is that Candace, from what I see, has been fairly consistent. She has never not led with her faith. She's never not been critical of affirmative action and some of the race discourse in America that Black people engage in. She's never been unclear about how she feels about the world. And it just so happens that because many of her talking points are right wing, and I think she's dead wrong. I think she's wrong as two left shoes on a million things. She might be right to some extent on Israel. She might be right to some extent on Iran. She might be right to some extent on Gaza. And if those things are true, we need to listen no matter what she thinks. But I think because she's a right-wing figure, people have assumed that every part of her thought process, every part of her analysis, every part of her commentary is going to be right-wing. It's just not going to be that. I'll just say that. So that's not to say that there's no room to have a conversation about Candace Owens and grifting. And just saying, I don't think that this is a grift. I think she genuinely thinks Trump is out of pocket for what's going on in Iran. And we could argue about why she feels that way and why this is a priority issue to her. But I don't want to look like Ted Cruz going after Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, dog walked Ted Cruz. I mean, it was a fight they would stop it. Anyway, I want to thank some folk real quick. Zell773 said, appreciate your content, Mark. Not sure if you know when your next event in Chicago will be, but I definitely wouldn't want to miss it. That's a great question, brother. I should be in Chicago in the fall. I don't know when, but I should be. I was just there twice in June. I expect to be there again very soon. Chicago is like a second home, and Harold's Chicken is like my first home. I want to shout out F Money for joining the channel. Thank you so much. You have no idea what it means to have people become paying members of the channel. But this is alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. What is the word? What's the word? That's the person's name, the handle of the person who just wrote in and made a $200 or $199.99 donation to the channel. Family, I can't tell you how grateful I am for that. I can't tell you how much we need it here at the channel. We're working hard every single day to produce high quality content, to do good work, but it's hard to do when we're not getting the support that we deserve. So, or that we need. So I just want to say thank you for that. God bless you, bro. Been a fan for years. Would just love to hear your opinion on 1, JBP Patreon earnings, and 2, New York City mayoral. Okay, I'll answer both for you. Although I talked about the mayoralty last night. I'm making a banner for you. So, bird is the word. So, let's get to it. First, Zohran Mamdani won the New York mayoral race. I talked about this last night. I suggest you guys check out last night's show where I go in and do a deep dive. But my short answer is, one, this victory of Zohran Mamdani doesn't happen without the last 2 years of protests in the street. People protesting on behalf of Palestine, people changing public consciousness, made it possible to create space for Zohran Mamdani. I just want to make that clear. Mamdani is a lot of things. He is smart, he is cultured, he is informed, he comes out of a radical tradition. He's a practical man, though. He knows how to lead. He knows how to use practical wisdom to address issues and problems. I think Zohran Mamdani is going to be an excellent mayor for New York City. And I think it's important, one, to prioritize that so that we don't get so caught up in all the other stuff that we don't ask the fundamental question, like, is this person going to be a good mayor? I think that's important. There's more, though. I think Chris Cuomo should have been able to pull out this victory, but the fact that he couldn't speaks to where we are as a society, as a culture. Maybe people are finally tired of the Cuomo allegations, or they're disgusted by the Cuomo allegations, and they simply don't want to bring him back. Other people are like, yeah, the sexual harassment stuff is what it is. That's a debate to have. But what about policy? And I think the policy is where you get even trickier when you look at the nursing home fiasco, when you look at the reporting, the underreporting of deaths, when you look at the failure to fund, the failure to really follow the proper science on certain issues. It was striking, and it was scary to see the race so close at one point, because like, what are we talking about? So I'm just I'm just excited at what's possible, not just for New York or for the mayor, whatever, but in terms of grassroots politics. I think people saw that when we organize and we fight and we struggle and we commit, we can win any battle. And making a Muslim immigrant socialist radical into a viable mayoral candidate, I think that speaks to, this isn't smoke and mirrors, this isn't like a fake, this isn't anything like that. It's a testament to what happens when we organize. And I'm saying we as a human race, or we as an electorate. I didn't do any organizing for Zohran Mamdani, so please don't give me the credit for it. I'm saying we as a kind of universal we. It's going to be tough to imagine a general election that doesn't include Cuomo or Adams. Adams seems to already be on the campaign trail, declaring what his strategy is going to be. We knew he was going to run as an independent, so that's not a surprise. But it's almost like he's not even trying to tell it, trying to hide what he's doing. He is telegraphing his punches. He's saying, "Yeah, I'm going after Mamdani, and I'm going to scare you, and I'm going to get all the Republicans to vote for me." But Andrew Cuomo also said last night that he said it was Mamdani's night. He didn't say it was his race. He said it was his night, and he made it seem like he might be pulling back up to run. That's what I think. So if you get Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo in a race, I don't know how that turns out. I suspect they split some votes up. I suspect it actually works out for Mamdani, but regardless of whatever, please know the Cuomo effect is not over. The Cuomo mess isn't over, and neither is the Eric Adams mess. So we'll just have to watch and see. Pink Highlighter, thank you so much for the generous donation. I do appreciate it. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Now back to you. What's the word? You said JBP Patreon earnings. So for those that don't know, Joe Budden inadvertently on his Instagram stories leaked his revenue from Patreon. I didn't look at it too closely, but I know it was over $900,000. The websites are talking about it. People are texting me about it. People are asking me a lot of questions about it. One, did I know it was going to happen? No, I didn't. I didn't expect it to happen. Bragging about how much money he made, putting out a bunch of numbers, that's not Joe's style. He's too cool for that. So I didn't expect him to do that. And I think it was just an honest mistake. I don't think it was a conspiracy. I think he made an honest mistake. I think he the person who was supposed to black out the info for him didn't do a good job. And so when he posted it, you could see through it. Also, we old, man. We don't be knowing all the technology. I don't know. Y'all could turn up the light here and turn this thing there and see. If I knew all that, yeah, I probably wouldn't even be on the internet. Certainly not on the phone. People asked if we were angry at Joe for this. Why would we be angry or hurt? Why would we be hurt? I work at the Joe Budden podcast, and my arrangement is my arrangement. My deal is my deal. And if Joe hits Powerball and suddenly worth 300 million more, I don't necessarily say, hey, that means my job is worth more. I don't know if that's fair or reasonable. I do think that workers need a bigger slice of the revenue. And we talk about the means of production. I mean, how alienated we are from our labor. I mean, there's a million arguments you could make for why we should get more. And I'm with all of them. Pay me more. But I want to be clear that I don't feel like this revelation on Instagram of Joe Budden's suddenly means that he owes me, or I'll speak for myself, that he owes me anything. If I'm owed anything, it's at any employer, it's because of the quality of my work or the strength of a contract we already signed. So I just don't look at my employer and say, oh, you had a good year, you had a big year, you hit the lottery, you got hit by a bus and got insurance, whatever. Like, now pay me more. Like, I don't think that way. And maybe that's the right way to think, but I don't think that way. And I don't think anyone else up there, at least no one I've spoken to, thinks that way. I think we all are happy for Joe. Those numbers didn't shock me. I already had an idea about what Joe made. So this isn't far from what I thought and think he makes. I just don't care. It's not my business. I'm only answering this because someone asked me. I do think that, for some of y'all who were talking crazy about Joe, about where he's sitting in the garden or how much bread people got, you don't know what people be up to. You don't know how much money they have. You don't know what they do. Don't assume cats ain't up when they up. And Joe been up for a minute now, and he says it. So I don't think y'all even got to guess. But shout out to Joe. I'm glad that he has reached the milestone of visits to Patreon. I'm proud and excited for him that he has such a huge Patreon subscriber base. And I'm just excited to see him winning. You know, he's come a long way, and he's not only winning, but he's modeling for other artists, other creators, other podcasters, other everything. He's modeling for them what's possible when you believe and invest in yourself. Now, it's not get rich quick. It's not easy. Everybody can't invest in themselves. I see half y'all got these YouTube channels that got like 5 views and you're not making any money and you're grinding, and I get it. So I'm not saying it's easy. But what I am saying is when you have the opportunity to invest in yourself, and you have the opportunity to produce content through your own label, your own platform, or whatever, do it. Because what you see in Joe Budden is what happens when you believe in yourself, when you invest in yourself, when you sacrifice for yourself. You know, when you do that, you'll win. Winning might look different to different people, but you'll win. So shout out to Joe. You know, again, I don't think the leak was on purpose. I don't think it was some weird, you know, I just think things happen. And the information's out there. He didn't deny it. He didn't run from it. He said, you know, we made jokes, we talked about it, and then we moved on because nobody's tripping. All we want is to make a good show every day. At least that's my goal every single night, to make a good show. Anyway, family, I hope you thought this was a good show. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all soon. Hit that like button if you're so inclined. You can not just hit the like and the subscribe button, which you should hit. Don't cost you anything. But if you're so inclined, please hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. You can hit the join button and join at any level from bronze to diamond, and it will allow you to be a paid member of the channel. You'll have specially branded segments, access to early stuff, early to extended stuff. You'll have all kinds of amazing opportunities if you become a paid member of the channel. But more importantly, or for us, being a paid member gives us the financial stability we need to build the channel. It gives us the dependability, the frequency to be able to do the things we need to do to get out of this studio and into a professional studio, to get more equipment, to get more tech folks so we can get more content out. I want to do all of that, but we need your support. So please consider going to join and joining the channel, por favor. Also, if you don't want to join the channel, or if you don't want to make a monthly commitment, there's other ways to support us. You can go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. That's Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. You can drop something in, even if it's $1. Please understand, $1 helps us. If it's $1 million, ooh, I love you, I love you, I love you. If there's anything in the middle, we're grateful as well. Just know that if everybody watching right now were to donate $5, we'd be able to meet our financial goals for the month. So I encourage people, everybody listening, everyone who can hear the sound of my voice, to Cash App or Venmo just $5. And if you do that, if everyone does that, we'll meet our financial goals for the month. But again, no amount's too small, no amount's too big. If you're really itching to drop 10,000, do it. If you're really itching to drop $1 million, please do it. There's somebody out there right now watching who can donate $1 million. And I would ask that if you do it, that you understand that it's not for me, it's not for a few underlings, as you might call it. It is to invest in us. So just consider it. Anyway, Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle, drop something in now. In the meantime, I will see y'all tomorrow, fam. Love y'all. Peace.